I had just stepped off the subway when my phone buzzed in my hand. It was a message from my brother, Sam. Mom says you'll never get that bonus. She laughed, called it your little pipe dream. I felt a sharp sting, but instead of anger, I just laughed. I should have known better than to expect anything else. After all the extra hours I'd put in, running errands, covering shifts, and picking up the slack wherever they needed me, I thought at least they would come through. A bonus wasn't asking for much, it was the bare minimum. But apparently, I was wrong. The ride home felt longer than usual. I couldn't stop thinking about the message and what Sam had said. What did they think I was doing all those weeks? What did they think I had been working for? I tried not to dwell on it, but it wasn't easy. I walked into the apartment, expecting the usual scene. Emma in the kitchen, humming to herself, Mom watching her cooking show, the quiet hum of a cozy home. But what I found instead was unsettling silence. That kind of silence that makes your heart sink. The kind of silence that makes you stop in your tracks before you even realize it. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. I found Emma sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. Her eyes were wide, but unfocused, as if she was seeing something far beyond the screen. She wasn't scrolling through her phone like she usually did. She wasn't chatting with her friends or pretending to do her homework. No, this was different. She looked lost. I dropped my bag by the door, careful not to make a sound, afraid that if I did, I might shatter the fragile moment. "Hey, Em," I said, soft enough not to startle her. She blinked, as if she didn't realize I was standing there. When she looked up, her face was puffy. Her eyes were swollen, like she'd been crying for hours. But she tried to hide it, forcing her lips into a thin line and wiping at her face like she didn't want to admit anything was wrong. I sat down next to her, close enough to show her I was here, but not too close to crowd her space. "Are you okay?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. For a long moment, she didn't respond. She just kept her eyes on the TV screen, her gaze unfocused. I could see the way her jaw clenched, the way she held her breath, like she was trying to keep something from spilling out. But the tension was unbearable. Finally, she turned to me, her voice so quiet I could barely hear her. "They said I don't deserve it." My stomach dropped at the words. "What? What are you talking about?" She finally faced me, her face twisted with a mix of confusion and hurt. "Mom and Dad, they told me I'm not worth the bonus. They said I'm lucky to have a job at all, and that I should be grateful, but not expect anything else." The words hit me harder than I expected. I had seen them dismiss her work before, but this was different. This was a complete denial of her worth. Emma had worked tirelessly for weeks. She'd sacrificed her time and energy, taking on shifts no one else wanted, and all for the promise of a small bonus. A promise that now seemed like a cruel joke. I could feel the anger building inside me, but I held it back, forcing myself to stay calm. "But they promised you," I said, trying to process it all. "How can they just take that back?" Emma wiped her eyes and shook her head, her voice breaking. "They said my work wasn't even good enough, that it was a joke." I could feel the fire rise in me, but Emma didn't need me to yell. She needed me to be strong for her, to show her that this wasn't her fault. I took a slow breath and placed my hand on hers. "No," I said firmly. "Your work was not a joke. You did everything you were supposed to do. They can't just take that away from you." Emma's fingers tightened around mine. "They said if I wanted a real job, I should go somewhere else." And that was it. That was the breaking point. I stood up, my body filled with a kind of energy I didn't know I had. "That's it. I'm calling them." I pulled out my phone, my fingers shaking with frustration, and dialed my mom's number, ready to confront her once and for all. I stared at my phone for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision. The reality of it hit me. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was a matter of respect, of fairness, and of standing up for what was right. I pressed dial, my fingers tight on the edges of the phone, my pulse quickening as it rang. Mom picked up after a couple of rings, her voice laced with the usual cheerfulness. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though my nerves were beginning to fray. "Emma says you told her you're not going to pay her the bonus?" There was a brief pause, and I could almost hear her smirking on the other end. "Oh, that," she replied dismissively. "Yeah, we're not paying her. She didn't do enough to earn it." I could feel the anger rising in me, but I held it back, speaking carefully. What do you mean she didn't do enough? She worked full-time for weeks. She was there. She gave everything, and now you're saying it doesn't count. Mom chuckled, her voice light, almost amused. She should be grateful. She's family. She wasn't hired. She was just helping out. I felt my hands tighten around the phone, gripping it so hard my fingers hurt. No, Mom, she worked. She was promised something for her time and effort. You can't just take that away from her because it's convenient. Well, she should know better, Mom replied, her tone shifting, sharp and impatient. We didn't hire her for a job. We did her a favor. Family doesn't get paid for helping out. Helping out? I repeated, my voice starting to tremble with frustration. That's not helping out. She was doing actual work, full shifts. You can't just dismiss it like it doesn't matter because she's your daughter. Well, she needs to learn that family doesn't get paid for helping, Mom said, dismissing me completely, her voice cold now. I paused, breathing in slowly, trying to collect my thoughts. You promised her. You can't break that promise. You're overreacting, Mom said, as though it was all a small misunderstanding. It's no big deal. She'll get over it. No, Mom, it is a big deal, I said, my voice firm now. And she's not going to get over it. Not this time. I'm going to make sure of it. The line went silent for a moment, and I could feel the tension building. I could tell she wasn't used to being challenged like this. You're making a huge mistake, Mom finally said, her voice barely controlled. No, you are, I replied, my stomach tightening with determination. You made the mistake, and now it's time for you to fix it. I ended the call before she could respond, standing there in the quiet, staring at the wall, feeling a strange mix of anger and resolve. I couldn't let this slide. Not this time. Not when it came to Emma. The next morning, I sat down with Emma's phone in front of me. I pulled up the labor board's complaint portal and started filling out the form, attaching screenshots of the messages with promises of pay, the shifts she worked, the messages asking her to come in at specific times. It wasn't about dramatizing anything. It was about the truth. It was about making sure Emma's work was acknowledged. I clicked submit without a second thought. A confirmation number appeared, and I took a screenshot, saving it for myself. I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing, but I knew I had to do something. Emma deserved better. She deserved more than empty promises and cruel laughs. I put the phone down, stared at the confirmation number on my screen, and took a deep breath. It was done. Later that day, my phone rang. It was Mom. I felt my stomach tighten. I answered, knowing what was coming. Tessa, she said, sounding forced. Did you really file a complaint? Yes, I said, my voice calm. You didn't pay her. You lied to her. I'm not going to let you get away with it. There was a long silence before she spoke again. You've made a huge mistake, she hissed. No, Mom, I replied. You made the mistake, and now you're going to fix it. The call ended with her angry threats and a sense of finality in my chest. I knew this was far from over, but I also knew one thing for sure. No matter what came next, I had done the right thing for Emma, and that was all that mattered. The next few days felt like a blur. I was waiting for the storm to hit, knowing my mother wasn't the type to let things go easily. But even as I braced myself for the backlash, part of me felt an odd sense of peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't tiptoeing around their expectations. I wasn't trying to keep the peace or stay under the radar. I had made my decision, and I was standing by it. The phone didn't ring for the next 2 days, but I could feel the pressure building. Every time I passed the apartment, I imagined my mom plotting her next move. Then, on the third day, it came. A message from Sam. Mom's pissed. She's threatening to take care of it and says we're going to regret this. The text was short, but I could hear the tension in it. Sam had always been the peacekeeper, the one who tried to avoid confrontation. I knew he wasn't comfortable with where things were heading, but there was no turning back now. I didn't respond to Sam's message right away. I was preparing myself for what came next. That evening, when I came home from work, I saw the familiar figure of my mom standing on the porch, her arms crossed, waiting. She looked like she was trying to hold herself together, but I could see the edges of her anger starting to crack through. The coldness in her eyes made my stomach twist. When I opened the door, she didn't even greet me. She just stepped forward, her voice clipped. We need to talk. I held my ground. I know we do. I filed the complaint. You're going to have to deal with it. She didn't look surprised, just frustrated, like I'd forced her into a corner. You think this is helping? She demanded. This is a family business. You don't do this to family. I didn't flinch. You didn't do right by Emma. You promised her, and you didn't follow through. That's what this is about. You can't just ignore that. She scoffed, clearly not ready to accept responsibility. She's not a paid employee. She's family. She was just helping out. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside, I was seething. She worked. She worked just like anyone else. And you promised her pay. Family doesn't get to take advantage like this. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said, her voice lowering into a thinly veiled threat. You're making things worse. Do you know what this is going to do to us? Do you know what you did to her? I shot back. My voice was firm, unwavering. She's 14, and you treated her like her work didn't matter. She believed in you, Mom, and you crushed that. The words seemed to hit her harder than I expected. She looked at me for a long moment, her mouth twitching like she was trying to hold something back. This wasn't supposed to go this far, she said quietly, almost to herself. I couldn't let up now. You chose this. You chose to take advantage of her, and now you're going to have to face the consequences. She looked like she was going to say something else, but instead she turned on her heel and stormed off the porch, her steps heavy with frustration. I watched her go, the sound of her retreating footsteps echoing in my ears. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to crack wide open. It was only a matter of time before things escalated further. But I also knew I couldn't back down. I had taken a stand for Emma, and I wasn't going to let anyone make her feel like her worth was up for debate. I didn't know what was coming next, but I was ready. Emma deserved better, and I was going to make sure she got it. The following morning, I woke to a message from Mom. It was short and to the point. We need to talk. Come over later. My stomach churned. The calm before the storm had officially ended. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to hear whatever new excuse she was going to make, but I knew I couldn't avoid this. Not now. Not when things had already gone too far. I spent the day at work, trying to distract myself, but every time I glanced at my phone, I felt the familiar weight of anxiety creeping in. I wanted to be strong, to be the one in control, but part of me was still bracing for the guilt trip that was surely coming. When I walked into the apartment that evening, the tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. Emma was sitting at the kitchen table, her head down, fingers absent-mindedly tracing the edge of her notebook. She looked up when I walked in, her expression anxious, like she was waiting for me to say something, but unsure of what. I smiled weakly, trying to ease her nerves, but it didn't work. She could tell something was off. I have to go meet Mom, I said, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the edge in my own voice. She wants to talk. Emma didn't say anything at first, just nodded, but the sadness in her eyes was enough to make my heart ache. Are you okay? I asked, sitting next to her. She hesitated before answering. I don't know, Mom. I don't know if I'm okay. I feel like everything is falling apart. I took her hand, squeezing it gently. You're going to be okay. I promise you that. I'm not letting anyone take advantage of you again. Not ever. I'm going to fix this. Just hang in there. Emma gave me a small, grateful smile, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. It wasn't that she didn't trust me. She just didn't believe that the world would actually treat her fairly. After everything that had happened, I couldn't blame her. I grabbed my jacket and left the apartment, trying to steady my breathing as I walked to Mom's house. Every step felt heavier, like the weight of our fractured family was pressing down on me. When I arrived, I could see the tense expression on Mom's face through the window. She was waiting for me. Come in, she said curtly when I knocked. She didn't even try to make it sound warm or welcoming. It was like a command, a stark reminder that this conversation wasn't going to be about reconciliation. It was going to be about control. I stepped inside, the door closing behind me with a soft click. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, her arms crossed, eyes narrow. She didn't even offer me a seat. What did you do? She asked, her voice tight with frustration. Do you have any idea what you've caused? Do you understand what this is going to do to the business? I didn't flinch. I understand perfectly. You promised Emma something and you didn't deliver. She worked hard for that bonus. You can't just take advantage of her because she's family." Mom's lips curled into a sneer. "She's a kid. She's supposed to learn that life isn't all about handouts. She doesn't need a bonus for doing a few hours of work. You're making this a bigger deal than it is." "No," I said firmly, my voice not shaking this time. "You're making it a bigger deal by not taking responsibility. You promised her, Mom. You can't just sweep that under the rug because you don't want to deal with the consequences." Her eyes flashed with anger. "You think you can control everything? You think you can dictate how we run this family?" "No, Mom," I replied, standing my ground. "I can't control everything, but I can make sure my sister gets what she deserves, and I'm not going to let you make her feel like she's not worth anything." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with unspoken words, and I could see that Mom was struggling to come up with a response that would make me back down. But I wasn't backing down. Not this time. Finally, she spoke, her voice much quieter. "You're making a huge mistake. You don't know what this will do to us. You don't know what this will do to the restaurant." "I know what it's doing to Emma," I said, "and that's all that matters. You've hurt her, Mom, and I'm not going to let you get away with it." She opened her mouth to say something, but then stopped herself. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than anger in her eyes. Regret, maybe, or maybe it was fear. Either way, it was too late. "I'm not withdrawing the complaint," I said, turning to leave. "You made this choice. Now you'll face the consequences." As I walked out, I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. The fight wasn't over, but I had taken the first step toward making things right, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was finally in control. The days following my confrontation with Mom were a strange mix of silence and tension. I expected her to call, to try to smooth things over or make empty threats, but nothing came. I began to wonder if I had made a mistake, if the silence meant my mom was done fighting, or if she was just plotting her next move. Emma, on the other hand, seemed to grow quieter, withdrawing further into herself. I couldn't blame her. She had been through too much already. I made a point to check in with her regularly, to remind her that no matter what happened with our family, she wasn't alone in this. But still, there was a knot in my stomach, a constant weight pressing down on me. I didn't know how long I could keep going like this, how long I could face the fallout of my choices. As much as I wanted to believe I had done the right thing, there was a part of me that couldn't shake the feeling that the consequences of all of this were going to be bigger than I had anticipated. Then, 2 days after my confrontation with Mom, I got a message from Sam. "Mom and Belle are saying they're going to fix this privately. They want you to take back the complaint." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I knew exactly what that meant. They were trying to control the narrative, to make me feel like I was the one who had overreacted. I could hear their voices in my head already, trying to make me feel guilty for standing up for Emma. I stared at the message for a long time, my mind racing. What was I supposed to do now? I had already made my choice. I had already filed the complaint. I wasn't about to let them back me into a corner again, but the thought of dealing with more drama, more manipulation, it made me sick. That night, I didn't get any sleep. I stayed up, turning the situation over and over in my mind. Every time I thought I had a plan, a resolution, the doubts crept back in. Maybe I could just let it go. Maybe I could ask for forgiveness, pretend it was a mistake. But the thought of letting them win, of letting them continue to take advantage of Emma, it felt like a betrayal. The next morning, I was running on fumes, but I knew what I had to do. I had to stand my ground. I had to be the voice that wouldn't back down. I wasn't just fighting for the money, though that was important. I was fighting for Emma's self-worth, her dignity. And that was worth far more than anything Mom or Belle could offer. I got to work and immediately opened my laptop, my fingers already reaching for the keyboard before I even realized what I was doing. I drafted a message to Mom. It was short, calm, and direct. "I'm not withdrawing the complaint. Emma deserves what was promised to her, and I won't let you treat her like her time doesn't matter. I'm standing by her, and I'm not backing down." I stared at the message for a moment before hitting send. A small, quiet satisfaction settled in my chest. I didn't need to beg for approval. I didn't need to apologize for demanding that Emma be treated with respect. The response came almost immediately, my phone buzzing with a message from Mom. "You've made a terrible mistake," it read. "This is going to ruin everything." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was already out there, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into taking it back. I didn't care if it ruined their restaurant or their reputation. What mattered was that Emma was finally going to get what she deserved. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing the right thing. Later that evening, as I made dinner, I heard Emma's soft footsteps in the kitchen. She came over and wrapped her arms around me from behind, her chin resting on my shoulder. "Did they say anything?" she asked quietly. I turned around, smiling at her. "Yeah," I said. "But it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're going to get paid. They can't take that away from you." She squeezed me tighter, and for the first time in days, I felt the weight in my chest start to lift. Emma might not fully understand the fight I was waging, but she understood that she wasn't alone, and that was enough for now. The following days felt like I was moving through a fog. I wasn't sure what to expect next, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. The ripple effect of my actions had started to spread, and I could feel the tension between me and my family thickening with every passing hour. The silence from Mom and Belle was almost worse than any argument they could have thrown at me. I wasn't sure if they were planning something or if they were just waiting for me to cave, to call it off and apologize. But I wasn't going to. Emma and I fell into a strange routine. I would go to work, and she would stay home, trying to focus on her schoolwork and the normal things she loved. But there was always an undercurrent of unease. I could see it in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking, a kind of sadness that hadn't been there before. It broke my heart to see her so uncertain, so unsure of her place in this family. I knew I was doing the right thing, but it didn't make watching her struggle any easier. Then came the letter. I found it in the mailbox when I came home from work, the return address from the labor board. My heart dropped into my stomach as I opened it, a mix of hope and dread filling me. Inside was a formal notice confirming that the case had been processed. It wasn't a final ruling yet, but it was a start. The words on the paper felt like they were etched in stone. Your complaint has been officially logged, and the investigation is underway. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to jump up and celebrate, but the reality of what this meant hit me like a cold wave. The business was in trouble, and it wasn't just a family disagreement anymore. This was an official record. There were no taking it back, no brushing it under the rug. I went inside, still holding the letter in my hand, and found Emma sitting at the kitchen table, her face pensive. "What's that?" she asked, her voice a little too quiet. I held up the letter, letting her read it. "The complaint is officially being investigated," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Her eyes widened slightly. "So it's really happening?" I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. "Yeah, it's happening." Emma was quiet for a long time, and I could see her processing it all. Then finally, she spoke, her voice small but steady. "Are you scared?" It was a simple question, but it hit me hard. Of course I was scared. I was terrified. Terrified of what this would do to our family, terrified of the damage it could cause to Emma's self-worth, to everything we had known before this fight. But I couldn't show her that. I couldn't show her my fear, not when she needed me to be strong. "No," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm not scared. We're doing the right thing. We have to stand up for what's right." Emma nodded, her gaze softening. She didn't look entirely convinced, but I could see the small shift in her expression. Maybe she was starting to believe it too. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation with Mom in my mind. What would happen next? How far were they willing to go to make this go away? Would they come after me for this? Part of me wanted to avoid the inevitable confrontation, to pretend it hadn't happened, and just go back to being the family we were before. But I knew better now. I couldn't go back. Not after everything they'd done to Emma. I sat up in bed, staring out the window at the night sky. The moon was full, casting a soft glow over everything. It felt like everything was suspended in time, the calm before the storm. And yet, I wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time, I felt certain about what I was doing. I wasn't just standing up for Emma. I was standing up for myself, for the person I had become. I wasn't going to be intimidated. I wasn't going to let them win. Not this time. And when the storm came, I would be ready. The next few days felt like walking on eggshells, not knowing when the other shoe would drop. I kept waiting for a call, a message, anything from Mom or Belle, telling me to back off, that I had crossed a line, that I was being dramatic. But it didn't come. Instead, there was only silence. The kind of silence that makes you feel like you're living in a world where everything is teetering on the edge of breaking, but no one wants to acknowledge it. Emma, too, seemed quieter than usual. I tried to keep things normal, asking her about her day, making dinner together, watching movies like we used to. But there was always that unease, like an invisible weight pressing down on us. She didn't bring up the situation much, but I knew it was on her mind. Every time she looked at her phone, her face would go pale, like she was expecting something bad. I didn't want to keep her in the dark, but I wasn't sure how to explain everything without burdening her further. Then, one evening, after I came home from work, I saw the message waiting for me on my phone. It was from Sam. It read, "Mom's reached out. She says they'll pay, but only if we withdraw the complaint. I think she's serious this time. You should come over." I stared at the message for a moment, a knot forming in my stomach. Part of me wanted to dismiss it, to ignore it, but I couldn't. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the point where I would either stand firm or crumble. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to back down, not after everything that had happened. I told Emma I had to go see Mom. She nodded without saying much, though I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "Be careful," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. It felt like she was more worried about me than she was about the situation itself. When I arrived at Mom's house, the tension was palpable. She was waiting for me in the kitchen, her posture stiff, her arms crossed like she was preparing for a fight. Belle was sitting at the table, her arms crossed as well, her expression one of cold determination. "Come in, Tessa," Mom said, but there was no warmth in her voice, just an edge. "Let's talk." I stepped inside, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just about the bonus anymore. This was about everything we had swept under the rug for years, about the manipulation, the favoritism, and the countless times they had made me feel small. "I'm not withdrawing the complaint," I said, my voice steady. "You promised Emma that you'd pay her. You can't just take that back because it's inconvenient for you." Mom's face hardened. "You don't understand, Tessa. We've been through so much with this restaurant. This business is everything. If we don't fix this, it'll all fall apart." I felt a sharp pang in my chest, but I didn't let it show. "You can't use that as an excuse anymore. It's not about the business. It's about doing what's right. It's about respecting Emma. You can't just treat her like she doesn't matter." Belle scoffed, rolling her eyes. "You're really going to make this a big deal? Over a bonus? It's not worth ruining the family over." I clenched my fists, but I kept my voice even. "It's not just about the bonus. It's about how you've treated Emma. She worked hard. She deserves that money. And if you don't pay her, then I'll make sure everyone knows what you did." Mom's eyes flicked to Belle, then back to me. "You're making a huge mistake, Tessa," she said, her voice low. "We're family. This is how we do things." "No," I said firmly. "This is how you do things. Not anymore. We're not doing this your way anymore." For a moment, there was a tense silence. Then Mom finally spoke, her voice quieter now, almost defeated. "Fine," she said, her eyes narrowing. "We'll pay her. But don't think this is over. There will be consequences." I didn't flinch. The only consequence is that Emma will get paid what she's owed. As I turned to leave, I felt a small sense of triumph, but it wasn't the victory I had imagined. There was no relief, no sense of justice served. Just the heavy knowledge that this battle wasn't over yet. When I got home, Emma was waiting for me. She didn't ask what had happened. She didn't need to. I could see it in her eyes. She already knew. And I knew too. This was just the beginning, but at least we were finally on the right side of things. Life's too short to let anyone walk all over you, especially when it comes to your hard work and dignity. Stand your ground, speak up when you're treated unfairly, and never let anyone make you feel like your efforts don't matter. It's easy to back down, But the real power comes when you stay firm and make sure the truth is heard. So remember, don't let people take advantage of you, just like we did in Revenge Protocol. Want more tips on how to level up your life? Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and let's get this revenge train rolling.